Probably the highest contributor for that one is Metro Manila, a region comprising 16 cities and one municipality, and it is expected to remain dominant and absorb more people into its periphery. Housing has received increasing attentions from economic, social, and environmental factors here in the Philippines. Now, according to Republic Act number 1120 or 1120, the recently passed law creating the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, it also highlights the need to provide affordable housing. So this is the target. How do we provide affordable housing? What are the factors? That's actually the basic question that we want to address in this study. And according to a report conducted by the University of Asia and the Pacific, the total housing need estimates about 6.7 million units, a number that is expected to rise to a staggering 12.3 million units by 2030. So I think that's more than double, okay, from the current number. With that, if we want to achieve that affordable housing, we need to incorporate what we call as sustainability. It's actually the trend in our field, in all engineering fields actually. Sustainable development in affordable housing seeks to achieve the three main goals. And there have been several studies which analytically investigated the critical success factors by the inclusion of various determinants of the respondent satisfaction, as well as employing the RII, or the Relative Importance Index, for ranking the importance of the identified determinants based on the respondent's perception. Also, non-profit and non-governmental organizations are also available to collaborate and support the sustainable housing movement. Now, what is the significance of this study? This will offer critical success factors, and we will use this the ranking of these factors to suggest policies, probably to both developers and policymakers in the Philippines, for efficient utilization of resources so that stakeholders, households, and developers could be better served. And this will also, future studies could be benefited on relationships between the CSF and the CSC, the critical success factor for sustainable, affordable housing in the Philippines. Now, what are the objectives of this study? Of course, the first one is to conduct a relative importance index based on the critical success factors when building sustainable, affordable housing under the economic, environmental, and social criteria. Once we have established the RII, we interpret that to differentiate the critical success factors for sustainable housing based on different stakeholder perspectives in the Philippines, namely the housing inhabitants and the industry professionals. So we have these two types of two groups of people involved in the study. And lastly, to identify the inclusion of the critical success factors on the housing programs in the Philippines. Okay, so after the identification of the critical success factors, what are the present projects or institutions that may address those factors in terms of sustainable, affordable housing? And what are the possible solutions after? Is it enough? Is it sufficient? So that's also the target, to interpret those CSFs. Now, the framework will just simply be like this, from input, process, and output. It will start with the survey questionnaire results using the Likert scale. And the process, under the process, the relative importance index of critical success factors, and the analysis and comparison of highest ranked critical success factor of the inhabitants and professionals. The outputs will be the perspectives. So we will be getting the perspectives of both the inhabitants and the professionals. We will compare it. And of course, incorporating the highest ranked CSF in the housing programs in the Philippines. Now let's talk more about the factors affecting the sustainable housing. So there are three, starting off with the economic. We need to discuss the significance of affordability, okay? Because that's the primary reason, right? We want to achieve affordable houses, but without sacrificing the future generation. Of course, we need to sustain. That's the term already, to sustain. Probably in the materials that we use in this affordable housing. If we have to measure also the economic side of the of affordable housing, we have to consider the monthly rent percentage or the monthly income. Okay, so in layman's terms, the 30% rule stated that a person's monthly housing expenses do not exceed 30% of his or her gross monthly income. So it's not affordable if you cannot reach that kind of rule. And also, we need to consider some housing finance institution in the Philippines, such as the Pag-ibig. Okay? In the Philippines, the Housing Development Mutual Fund, also known as the Pag-ibig Fund, was one of the most well-known and common options. They offered financial support to members who were looking to buy a house. 6 million pesos was the maximum loadable sum of Pag-ibig, and the monthly payments were as low as 2,445.30 per month, and terms as long as 30 years. Also, we need to consider the cost of transportation. It is a significant cost factor that had been ignored when determining affordability, because we are too focused on how much is the house or probably the rent. But when it comes to location, that's a factor as well. Neighborhoods that tended to be affordable in terms of housing costs were certainly not affordable when transportation costs were considered. And as a result, an affordable house was not sustainable if transportation costs and time were high. Because of the effects of transportation costs on the affordability of and Bajina, transport and facilities are at the intermediate needs level of a conceptual representation of the social sustainability of housing by Ansel and Thompson Fawcett. Also, aside from the transportation, the neighborhood quality is also a consideration. The tertiary needs of the model and figure were investigated at the neighborhood level in terms of overall quality and relationships. External noise was a common problem listed in the literature when it came to neighborhood quality. And we have to also consider the relationships in the community. It is another important factor on how residents feel about potential intensification and growth in their neighborhood. People are worried about the possibility of more restructuring. So for various reasons, majority of residents interviewed claimed that they did not really know their neighbors. So it's a social thing that we have to consider also. That is why we have to measure it using the relative, the RII. And of course, for the environment, common standards and considerations in terms of housing's environmental footprint and resilience for the whole life cycle of houses and energy and resource efficiency. A strategy to enhance housing's environmental sustainability was to reduce housing's environmental footprint in terms of energy. We have to make sure also that the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system is the most energy consuming part of a housing facility when it comes to mechanical components. We go now to the ranking of success factors. The adequate funding provision and affordability under the three factors were ranked as the most critical among the list of different SFs. So we highlight these three: the social, economic, and environmental. To start off with the methodology, data gathering, the instrument that the researchers used was a Likert scale type survey through 2 Google Forms. So we use Google Forms because this study was conducted in the middle of the pandemic. So we were not able to reach out personally to the respondents. And one for housing inhabitants and the other for industry professionals. The surveys were composed of 3 criteria: the economic, environment, and social. And the surveys were sent to the housing inhabitants and industry professionals as target respondents of the research. So for the size, or for the gathered respondents, we have a total of 127 housing inhabitants and 57 industry professionals. We also conducted reliability analysis of the instrument by considering 20 people first. They were surveyed, and we use what we call as the Cronbach's alpha formula to check the reliability of the questionnaire. So when we get a Cronbach's alpha of 0.9, that would be an excellent one, meaning there is internal consistency in terms of the survey. Now, the accuracy of the survey, of course, was done by inspection of some professionals, okay, 3 engineers particularly. They were able to edit the factors to check if all the factors are necessary to be inserted in the survey. Okay, and afterwards, conducted this reliability analysis before we distribute the survey to the inhabitants and the professionals. We use SPSS software, or the statistical package for the social sciences, for interactive or batch statistical analysis. It is an extremely powerful tool for manipulating and deciphering survey data. So we set up and import designated variable names, types, titles, and labels, meaning that minimal legwork is required from researchers. Then we go now to the computation of the relative importance index. So after this survey, after all the distribution of the survey, relative importance index is employed as a statistical tool to rank the critical success factors. Relative importance index is used to measure the significance of different factors by ranking. So you will see later on the result of this index. So it will be ranked using the software, and this is the formula used for the computation of the relative importance index, wherein we need to get the weight given to each attribute by the respondents and the maximum weight as A, and of course the total number of participants. It was also computed for each cause of the problem and the most significant cause that was formulated in each criteria of the survey was identified. For the results and discussion, these are the final list of the criteria per factor, starting off with the economic criteria. So we have, I think, more than 10 for the economic criteria, which involves, of course, the monthly housing expenses of a resident and the availability of affordable housing loans by housing finance institutions, resettlement programs, housing assistance for calamity victims, then government employees housing program, proximity of housing to employment, among others. So until I think it's around 20 factors under the economic criteria, and we will rank this. So what is the highest rank, no, in the list of this criteria? Okay, so as per the housing inhabitants result, the highest rank was EC 2.2. This is the housing assistance for calamity victims affected by typhoons, landslides, earthquakes, fires, and other natural calamities for relocation to safe areas. The value of the RII computed is 0.913 because the nearer it is to 1.0, the higher its importance, no, as a critical under the critical success factor. And then for the industry professionals, it's the same. It's the same criteria, the housing assistance for calamity victims, with an RII value of 0.930, meaning it really affects, no, if probably the location is calamity prone. So that's the primary consideration when you want to really propose or implement a good sustainable housing project. Is it really resilient enough to go against these calamities? Okay. In the environmental criteria, which include probably the reducing greenhouse gas emissions, using of thermal solar system, effect of using lead paint, and environmental impact of traditional construction, pre-disaster retrofitting over post-disaster retrofitting, among others. As a result, for the housing inhabitants group, the highest rank was EN 10.2, which is identifying waste or garbage that can be reused or recycled for proper disposal. The highest rank with RII value of 0.918. While for the industry professionals, it's different, but under the same probably category. So the highest rank for the industry professionals is understanding the concepts related to waste management, waste garbage, waste disposal, waste segregation, biodegradable, non-biodegradable, reuse, reduce, and recycle, having an RII value of 0.926. Then lastly, for the social criteria, it includes external noise in the neighborhood, safety in the neighborhood, level of engagement of residents in their communities, and accessibility of basic community services like healthcare, schools, stores, among others. As a result, for the housing inhabitants, the highest rank was SO12, safety in the neighborhood, with an RII value of 0.965. And industry professionals, it's the same, safety in the neighborhood, having an RII value of 0.937. As a summary of the rankings, we can say that the green highlighted items, they are similar for both housing inhabitants and industry professionals. The blue one may be unique per category, but as you can see, there is consistency in terms of the ranking between the housing inhabitants and industry professionals. But allow me to just focus on the rank 1 criteria so that we can relate it to the existing housing programs in the Philippines. Starting off with the economic factor, okay, as mentioned, the highest rank is the housing assistance for calamity victims affected by typhoons, landslides, earthquake, fires, and other natural calamities for relocation to safe areas. So we are supported by the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010. Okay? And there have been too many measures of disaster risk, okay, management. That includes maybe the study of resilience, structural resilience. There are different types of resilience, but we can appreciate as engineers that we consider the integrity of our structure by applying the concept of resilience. Okay, we do not only consider the strength of the structure. We also consider how it will revive, or how it will recover from the disaster such as probably earthquake, tsunami, and any other environmental hazards or occurrences. For the housing programs in the environment side, we have to address EN 10.1 and EN 10.2, which are both about waste management, okay? And under RA number 9003, or Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000, makes sure of public health and environment protection. And it set guidelines and targets for avoiding and reducing volume of solid waste through source reduction and waste minimization. And finally, for the social, although it's a simpler association for this factor, and we are addressing SO12, which is safety in the neighborhood, we have the barangay tanod system, okay? The barangay police officers or barangay public safety officers to ensure the safety in the neighborhood, supervised by the barangay chairperson. And we have also authorized the punong barangay of the Sangguniang Barangay to provide for the organization of community brigades, barangay tanod, or community service units as needed, the number of which in each barangay shall not exceed 20. As a conclusion, the Relative Importance Index of the economic, environment, and social critical success factors were conducted, and CSFs of each criterion were ranked with 1 for the highest RII value. Also, both stakeholder groups prioritize housing assistance for calamity victims, which had the highest ranked CSF for the economic criteria, and then for the environment criteria, identifying ways to be recycled for proper disposal, and the housing inhabitants had a practical approach and a holistic approach for the industry professionals in waste management. In the social criteria, both stakeholders had safety in the neighborhood as the priority. The industry professionals had a strong basis and awareness of the interests of the housing inhabitants, given that their CSFs matched with, which pointed to the transparency and reliability of the housing implementations in the Philippines, as could be stated by the program and laws that directly involved EC 2.2, EN 10.1, and EN 10.2, respectively. Finally, for the recommendations, since we only have 2 groups of people involved in the survey, we also want to recommend to add the government in the stakeholder groups, as housing assistance for calamity victims was of the utmost concern in the economic criteria for sustainable housing in the Philippines. Also, to provide accuracy, probably in the preparation of the survey and the number of respondents, we apply other statistical procedures, probably the analytical hierarchical process for the AHP, wherein we really involve experts to evaluate statistically each criteria that will be included in the survey. So, in a nutshell, this study is probably a simple approach to highlight some necessary factors for a certain problem. In this case, we need to achieve a sustainable, affordable housing. And if we have a lot of factors in mind, probably 100 or 1,000, no? Probably 1,000,000, we need to eliminate. There must be a process so that we can highlight the primary factors or criteria, so that private and public sectors can prioritize these factors and implement projects related to this. So I think that would be all. Thank you for listening.